Hiya, I'm Elliot from Free Life Financial, and today I'd like to share my top 10 tips for first-time buyers. If this is your first time watching, then please feel free to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below. Okay, so let's get straight into it. My first tip for first-time buyers is to prepare your documents. This is something you can do well in advance of starting your property search. Make sure you have your documents in order. When you apply for a mortgage, you'll be asked to provide pay slips, bank statements, ID, perhaps a lot more. So make sure you have access to these documents for when you might need them. Make sure they show the correct current address. Do your pay slips, your bank statement, your driving license show your correct current address? If not, get this fixed, as it could create an issue later. Tip number 2, get a mortgage in principle in advance. A mortgage in principle is sort of a pre-approval from a lender. Whether you're getting this yourself or through a mortgage advisor, this should be one of your first steps. It's important to know how much you may be able to borrow before you start your property search. Also, when you make an offer for a property, the estate agent will often ask for your mortgage in principle. If you don't have one ready, the vendor, the seller, might decide to go with another buyer who does have the mortgage ready. A mortgage in principle has a few different names, and that can be a bit confusing. They are sometimes referred to as agreement in principle or decision in principle. The worst thing is to fall in love with a property before you have this, then to find later that you can't get the mortgage that you need for that property, or you get it too late and end up missing out. Tip number 3 is to decide what you are looking for. In my opinion, it's important to have an idea of what you want before you start looking for a property. Although you will get more of an idea of what you're looking for after you start viewing properties, in my opinion, it is important to know in advance what's important to you. For example, if you are sure of the locations that you are open to and the locations that you're not open to, make sure you stick to that. You don't want to be sucked into a beautiful property that's simply in the wrong place. Other examples would be that you've decided you want a big sunny garden, or you need a property with lots of storage. If these are the things that are important to you, make sure you remember that when you're viewing properties. Otherwise, you could find yourself regretting a purchase in the future. Tip number 4, view multiple properties and view them more than once. It's as important to make sure you don't just jump into the first property you see as it is to make sure you view it more than once before committing to the purchase. Viewing properties can be very exciting, and viewing a property with the idea that that could be yours could lead to you seeing the property through rose-tinted glasses and jumping into a decision. Remember, there are plenty of properties out there, and if you have fallen in love with the first property you've seen, it's worth asking yourself, was this really exactly what you were looking for, or are you rushing in? When you have found the right property, make sure you view it more than once. Perhaps view it with friends or family who have experience in property and will know what to look for. You can often notice things, good or bad, the second time that you didn't notice the first time. Tip number 5, consider the chain. If the people selling the property to you are awaiting the purchase of another property before they can move out, this is what we call a chain. Some chains can be quite long. An example, the people selling property A need to wait until they can move into property B, but the people selling property B need to wait until property C is ready for moving, and so on. If you are a first-time buyer, you have no chain. This is a good thing. However, in some cases, the vendors or the sellers of your new home may need to wait until they find a suitable property for themselves to move into before they can move out and you can move in. In some cases, you could end up waiting months before you could actually move in. So find out about this in advance and decide whether you are in a position to wait. If, for example, you're living with parents and you're in no rush at all, then that's great. But if you're renting and your landlord's giving you a deadline, then you may need to consider the time frames. Tip number 6, consider the competition. Once you've found the perfect property and you're ready to make an offer, it's worth considering the competition that you may have for that property. This will largely depend on the market as well as that property itself. For example, in a market where there are more buyers than sellers, so what we call a seller's market, there may be other people interested in that same property and you could end up in a bidding war. For example, if you see a property that's just come on the market and the estate agent tells you there's 10 viewings booked just over this weekend, then you know there's a good chance you'll have to offer close to asking price or possibly even over asking price. Offering 10% below asking price on a property with this much interest in a seller's market is unlikely to secure the property, and you could find that the property sells before you have a chance to increase your offer. However, if you're interested in a property that's been on the market for a long time and there's not much interest, then you might want to try your luck with a lower offer, as there's little chance of somebody else outbidding you at the same time. Tip number 7, tell them you're a first-time buyer. I mentioned before that if you are a first-time buyer, then you don't have a chain, and this is a good thing. This means that you are ready to go. You don't have a property that you need to sell before you can move in. This is an advantage as a buyer because the vendor knows that there'll be less chance of complications throughout the process. So when you're viewing a property and when you make an offer, tell them you're a first-time buyer. If you can mention that you've already got a mortgage in principle too, even better. Tip number 8, measure up and don't buy anything that you can't store. Once you've agreed a purchase, it's easy to get excited and start ordering new furniture for your new home. But remember, there can be delays in the property purchase process. So if you don't have a move-in date yet, it's probably a good idea to avoid ordering furniture that doesn't let you choose or delay the delivery date unless you have somewhere that you can store that furniture. And of course, if you are ordering furniture, make sure it's going to fit in your new home. It is generally acceptable for you to contact the estate agent to book another viewing so that you can go around and take measurements if you're ordering furniture in advance. Tip number 9 is choose a no purchase, no fee solicitor. When you purchase a property, you will choose a solicitor, and it is possible at any time up to exchange of contracts for the purchase of your property to fall through. Some solicitors offer a no purchase, no fee agreement, which means if the purchase of your property did fall through, you wouldn't need to pay them the legal fee. So I recommend asking your solicitor in advance about this before you instruct them to act on your behalf for the purchase of the property. Okay, and last but not least, tip number 10 is when to pay for searches. Once you've instructed your solicitor, they'll usually take some money up front for something called searches. These are checks that are designed to ensure there's nothing you are unaware of that could negatively impact the property or its value. If the purchase of the property fell through after these searches had been carried out, usually you wouldn't be able to get that money back. So you may wait until your mortgage application has been accepted before you pay for these searches, because if you were unable to secure the mortgage, then at least you wouldn't have wasted your money paying for the searches. However, some people take this risk if they are confident that the mortgage application will be accepted. These searches can take a number of weeks to complete, so waiting until your mortgage application has been accepted can cause a delay, so it can be a quicker process to pay for the searches in advance while your mortgage application is in, but do bear in mind this comes with a risk. And that sums up my top 10 tips for first-time buyers. If there are any tips that you'd like to share, then please put in the comments, or of course if you have any questions, again please feel free to comment or get in touch.